going to share the book in the
Live streamed.
screen.
Okay.
Here we go. And so I'm here with Bruce Rawls, and we are reading Absence from Felicity, the story of Helen Schuckman and her scribing of A Course in Miracles. And we've been reading this for a while. Actually, we're moving along at a pretty quick clip here. We're 36%
Yeah.
through this book now.
We might
So
finish it this year.
we might finish it this year and maybe start something, a new Ken book next year or something. That'd be awesome. So
Yeah. Yeah.
do you ever think about this? Am I going to be doing this for the rest of my life?
Sure, why
Every
not?
Saturday morning? Yeah, why not?
I can't think of anything better to do, can you?
No, I
I'm
really can't.
I'm loving it. It's always a
I mean,
wonderful way to start the weekend.
yeah, and really, I mean, uh, I've been getting a lot all these books. I just get so much
Me too.
from
Me too. Oh yeah, yeah.
sharing. Yeah, so this one in
Yeah.
particular, I think, is really helpful. So I'm really
Well,
glad
it's
we're
it I
doing
mean
it.
ostensibly is a biography about Helen Schuckman, but as we started from our first conversation last summer, it's like, rereading this is like, wow, it's all about my resistance. That's just like a expose of everyone's ego's battle to keep usurping the throne in a dream, and Helen was just a stellar example of how we all have a brilliant right mind and enormous resistance.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's just, the way when you were just explaining that, I just recognized it was like the same thing over and over and over again. Like the whole dream, the whole
Groundhog Day.
illusion. We think, oh, the ego is so clever. No, it's not. The ego
Yeah.
just it's the same thing over and over. It's just in different variety. So we get to see death in all its varieties. We get to see a sickness in all its varieties. We get to see love in all its varieties, joy in all its varieties, all the different varieties of uh, of illusion
Yeah. Speaking
that
speaking of which, happy rebirth day yesterday. Was it yesterday?
yes, it was yesterday. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, that was a hoot too. That was amazing to me. I'm still kind of in shock because I'm not used to having a whole lot of anything going on. And
Oh, me neither.
we have a Joel Goldsmith group on
Yeah.
Fridays. We're reading practicing the presence. So I come in the Zoom room and I get everything all set up and get the book set up and everything ready to go in and start the reading. And then I start noticing people come in the Zoom room, and I was like, they don't usually come in for this group. No, they don't usually come. And then John Mundy showed up, and I'm like, John Mundy never comes to my groups. I'm like really baffled. This is how dense I am. I'm really baffled. I'm like, what is going on? You know what? Suddenly, people are all invited, or they, don't have anything else to do, and they're coming in for Joel Goldsmith. What's going on?
Well, what
Okay.
better thing do we have to do really than accept the atonement for ourselves, right? And have whatever method it
Exactly.
works for us, right?
Exactly. So all these people show up, and it turns out it's a surprise birthday party for Lynn.
Oh, cool.
Oh my gosh, and they
How
take
fun is
music,
that?
and I was
Oh, that's
just
cool.
in
I would have
awe.
joined if I'd known about it, but
Yeah,
although I was a bit busy yesterday, but with various things, but my spirit was there. So
that would have been really crazy too. I mean, if you would have showed up, I'd have really been like, what in the
what?
heck
How'd this happen?
is the
Exactly.
end of the world?
Really?
Oh yeah, but it was great. And also, happy heavenly birthday or leaving your body birthday to Helen, because
Oh, just,
February 9th was the day that Helen made her transition.
oh, really? Interesting. Huh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah, John reaffirmed that yesterday when we were talking about it, because I was like, yeah, I think that's what I read in Absence from Felicity was that she died on February 9th on my birthday, which of course you remember that.
Sure, sure.
But yep, it's something always. And also, 3 years ago, Dove's wife Suzanne passed away on my birthday as well.
Huh.
Uh, Many people. have passed away. I'm it would be odd if people didn't die on one whole day of a year. That would be odd, but because I'm
Oh, yeah, of
sure
course, of
millions of
course.
people die.
Yeah, it's interesting. I been married 3 times. My first wife and I were very close, and in many ways. And but then when we parted company, kind of lost track of her for a while. And I thought, gee, I wonder what she's up to around the holidays a few years ago, and found her obituary. And she had passed on my birthday. Oh, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, something like that. And I
Hmm,
thought, well, it's either one last dig at unresolved differences, or it's, hey, I'm off. Thanks for all the help. See you in
that's
the
how I look at
in
it.
see you and that's how I'm looking at it more and more. See you in the big uh, um, all-encompassing oneness, basically. So yeah, and it's also a good reminder. It's like all the forms that we think we've inhabited are just part of that dream too. And so it's really I'm thinking about a part of my mind that has never left me, and I've applied that to other people in my life that seem to have left either, in terms of mortality or the dream of that thereof, or just moving geographically, and it's like, well, it really doesn't matter because ideas don't leave their source, and I can't leave you or anyone else, and you can't leave me or anyone else, and you know to paraphrase Huey Lewis, in our right minds, we're happy to be stuck with each other, right?
That's right. I'm happy to be stuck with you. Yes, I love that. That's a great thought too. So,
Well, should we pick up where we left
all
off in
right.
the reading?
Yes, yeah. Why don't you read and hopefully I've got us at the right page.
Okay, I've got us at the bottom of page 189, but since we um, there's sort of a new shift in topic here. I'm going to back up a paragraph to where it says we now move from to the notes from October 19. Is that
Let's
something
see.
that's
I don't know. I have to move things around to find it. I have to remember which computer I
I'm
have
looking at your
it on.
screen share here. Yeah.
Okay,
There you go. Okay,
there it
yeah.
is. Oh,
So,
there's a bookmark right there too.
oh, okay.
Okay.
So, this is Ken says we now move to the notes from October 19. Helen begins. I think there is an error about this and not noticing and not remembering names, etc. I don't think it's only or even primarily projection. It may be more a fear of involvement or interaction due to an interpretation of interactions as one alone and the other subservient, or one getting by, the other losing. You avoid this if you don't meet or even see. Well, there's different aspects of talking about denial, it would sound like, right? Or avoidance
Yeah,
or
and
aversion or just being mindless in so many different ways of just not looking, as Ken might say.
yeah, because yeah, she did have a problem with names, and she didn't like to say a person's real name, like Louis. She called him Jonathan. And,
Mm-hmm.
um, it may be a fear of involvement or interaction due to an interpretation of interaction as one alone and the other subservient, or one getting by the other losing, or one getting by the other losing.
Hmm.
So,
You know,
so it's about inequality.
yeah, yeah. You know what I just flashed on as you were sharing that is you know, what's in a name kind of thing, and it's like, well, a name is the nature or the identity, and wanting to change the identity, it might be something that we all do, is we project onto the alleged others in our mind that it seem to be outside us in the world of space and time, all the things that we have disowned in ourselves. And so, sometimes literally, in the example you just gave, um, but in countless different ways, we really modify or attempt to modify the identity of the parts that we've disowned, including this silly, seemingly separate self, as I like to call the Bruce
Mhm.
figure in my example. Um, and so, why wouldn't we, find ways to make a substitute identity, a substitute reality, even though we all always know on some deep level that that's not working for us, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, it looks like she's noticing that by identifying somebody or something as an other outside of herself,
Mm-hmm.
that it's a indication of inequality,
Right.
because it has to be. We can't be the same if you're different. So if you're Bruce and I'm Lynn, then we're we're definitely not the same. Um, eh, and that I read that as, because one alone and the other subservient, or one getting by the other losing.
Oh, I read that. I put the emphasis on the wrong syllable, as they say, um, when I read that, because I was getting by. I was like, just managing or tolerating or coping. But yeah, I think the context that Helen meant, that was one getting by the other losing. That getting being the opposite of losing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
So
place where
yeah. So
I might
there's
be
there's
tempted to
the
put a comma, but
yeah. Well, no, I think the punctuation was fine. I just didn't read it with the right uh, you know, context, whatever. So it sounded a little funny. But now I think I'm quote unquote getting it. And hopefully giving it's I think that what that basically is another precursor of Helen addressing the subject of, giving and receiving are the same in truth, but they're very different on the level of form, right? And the ego's
mhm,
dream of lack, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so this, I mean, I think this is profound. You avoid this if you don't meet or
Mm-hmm.
even see. So just by avoiding identifying other people as other, uh, then you don't fall into that trap of inequality. Wow,
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty profound. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Okay. Do you want to continue reading?
Sure, sure. Yeah, this will take us, this next paragraph will take us to page 190. Right now we're finishing 189. Ken says, see below, page 240, for a fuller discussion of Helen's misuse of names. Also recall our earlier discussion on page 102. This is a referencing print version of Helen's and the ego's principle of one or the other. One wins, another loses. One lives, another dies. That we were just talking about. This principle also nicely serves the aforementioned need on Helen's part of keeping herself isolated and protected from the perceived threat of others. Well, to the ego, everyone's a threat. To the Holy Spirit, everyone is our long lost best friend, savior, and you know, seemingly orphaned part of our ourself that we long to bring back inside and cherish as um, the prodigal part of our mind that never really left. Right? Uh, Ken says the notes continue again with Helen as the speaker. And Helen says, also the idea of, quote, who ever heard about me, unquote, syndrome seems seems to me more of a way of denying ability. While it does serve as a rationale for exploiting another, it may also be a denial of my own strength, which I fear has been misused. I may even have suppressed a lot from misusing it. And then parentheses, you too, Bill. Um, Ken goes on, this syndrome is an example of the ego's arrogance masquerading as humility that the Course would discuss later, wherein we deny an ability that has come from God's love, believing that we know better than he does. Thus, the ego would have us arrogantly believe that we have the power to change what God created. This belief is the foundation of the entire ego thought system of separation and usurpation. More specifically, Helen and Bill would later be asked by Jesus not to deny their ability to participate in the, quote, collaborative venture, unquote, of bringing the Course into the world. Helen's final comment above refers to the ego's exploitation of apparent weakness as a ploy to manipulate another through guilt and pity. Yeah, a lot in there, huh?
yeah, that's pretty packed with um, psychological principles. It's not a very good alliteration because psychological sounds like an S, but pretty packed with psychological principles.
Right.
Psychological.
Positively.
Sorry, I divert us. But yeah, I mean, really, the whole discussion about individuality uh, and uh, our connectedness, how that works and what's happening with it is pretty profound here.
Hmm.
And that I like she's talking about, I'm backing up here, the idea of whoever heard about me syndrome. I don't really know what that is, whoever heard about me syndrome.
Well,
But
I think that's sort of like a self-deprecating, at least that what I when I read that, I thought it was sort of a self-deprecating comment of Helen's of, denying her ability to, if you will, since she was the one who quote unquote channeled the course, to basically be um, the medium through which Holy Spirit communicates. And I think when we do that, we're denying ourselves the learning that comes from that, as well as anyone that is is in our mind or in our environment.
yeah, so it's basically just that she was just kind of like, I'm not worthy, or
Yeah,
I'm not.
yeah, yeah. Exactly it is. I mean, in fact, the course says, the the problem isn't one of effort. It's one that, we don't think anyone, including ourselves, is worth consistent effort. Yeah, tying into the
I gotta tell you what,
Groundhog
that
Day theme, right?
particular um that that passage has really hit home with me recently.
Yeah,
Um, that because I actually did realize that the reason I haven't done a lot of things in my life, a lot of things that would have been much better for me and made a much better life, was because I didn't think I was worth it.
yeah. I
I
think we
didn't
all
think
have
I
that in
was
one
good enough.
fashion or another, don't we? I mean, because
Yeah.
if we recognized, who walks with us, as the course puts it, or who really resides in our mind, our right mind, you know, we we wouldn't sacrifice the peace. I mean, I think in the ego is quick to translate that as well. I have to sacrifice things on the level of form. Well, if there is no world, then there's not a whole lot of sacrifice going on one way or the other, regardless if we're an ascetic or a hedonistic libertine. Use a couple of fancy words that I've seen in Ken's writing, but but uh, but it's like, it's like, regardless of whether the dream world seems to be going fabulously from the world standards, or miserably, or anywhere in between, that's completely irrelevant. Healthy body, unhealthy body, wealth, poverty, um, great relationships, abysmal. It's like, well, it really is irrelevant to the real question is, am I at peace at any given moment? And if I can look at what I'm doing to sabotage that, often it does reflect in the world around us, because we're no longer trying to sabotage our peace, and therefore there's no need to continually, mess with things that reinforce that idea. But the whole point is, if if this world is made up, then I just need to really get to the cause, and stay focused on the cause in my mind. And if I can do that consistently, by recognizing that what the course is telling me, that my innocence is guaranteed and safeguarded, in the Christ mind, where it's never been attacked or violated, or has the potential for that. Like, that's phenomenal, isn't it? I mean, that's just amazing. But that's
Yeah,
our reality, isn't it?
that's our reality, and that's a miracle.
Yeah, yeah. That's, yeah. Talk about miracles. That's the real miracle, isn't it?
That's the real miracle.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the shift from what I thought I was to what I really am. was like night and day,
Hmm.
lights turn on, and man, the sun is out, and wow.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay, so let's see, where are we at? Um,
I've got Helen now discusses.
oh, okay. Do you want me to read on?
Sure.
Okay, so Helen now discusses an extremely important theme, similar to Jesus's message to Bill in her note of the 18th regarding his sphere of teaching. And I just wanted to, because I was in a wrong place when I thought we were starting before, um, I had just read this. Let's see, maybe I can't find it now. uh, okay, that Bill's fear of teaching was a belief that he was going to change, that it was going to change somebody or something, and that he felt like he was um, not worthy of doing anything that could possibly change another person. That somehow or the other, it was a power that didn't belong to him. And so teaching or imparting his knowledge or wisdom was taking on a um, taking on an arrogant position rather than a real what is it magnitude versus uh, why can't I think of the word now? Anyway,
Well, littleness isn't one opposite.
littleness, yes,
Yeah.
littleness versus magnitude. He's thinking that he's not worthy of the magnitude, and so he's coming in the experience of his smallness and unworthiness. And Jesus tells him, that's the absolute opposite of what's true, and you are absolutely so that's what this note that Helen sent to Bill about his fear of teaching was the idea of that he didn't want to I don't know, muddy the waters or you know interfere in their thinking. I don't know what his fear was, but and basically it was that he wasn't worthy, that he was too small to be in that position. And so Helen now discusses an extremely important theme, similar to Jesus's message to Bill in her note of the 18th. The fallacy now is if I don't use anything of mine, I won't hurt anybody, so I won't be hurt myself. The obvious answer is that paralysis won't get you anywhere, literally as well as figuratively. So she's just basically saying, shit or get off the pot, as my mom used to say. Quit trying to avoid what you're here to do because you think you're not worthy of it. So Ken says the notes continue the following morning, October 20th. This is Helen. I think under the projection and all that stuff is a hidden nostalgia for the soul. We want it back so we can identify with it because that is what we are really. We are really, and somewhere we know it. And again, that's Helen quite clearly knowing that she was not, and nobody was what they thought they were. So Ken says, this reflects what would later become a fundamental tenet of the course's teaching, namely that the entire ego thought system, quote, projection and all that stuff, end quote, is a defense against our underlying yearning to return to God, quote, a hidden nostalgia for the soul, end quote, which we, on some level, know is there. As the text would later state, under the ego's dark foundation is the memory of God. You realize that by removing the dark cloud that obscures it, your love for your Father would impel you to answer his call and leap into heaven. or still deeper than the ego's foundation, and much stronger than it will ever be, is your intense and burning love of God and His for you. This is what you really want to hide. And that's from text 13, uh, section 3. Um, and wow, I just want to just stop a second and think how profound that Ken brought the course into this story
Mhm.
and uses it to illustrate the principles that are coming about through her interaction with Bill in the years prior to the scribing of the course. You know how he's gone through this and brought the course back into it and said, look, this is exactly what she was thinking then, and here's how it's expounded in the course now. Pretty profound.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. There's a companion, some sentences that I think are part of the same section, chapter 13, section 3. This is a couple paragraphs further. Um, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to read the fourth paragraph in that section, which is ch
Sure.
again chapter 13, section 3, paragraph 4. Which to me there's just one sentence in there that just like it's just so impactful, and even the word would is italicized, the third one in that sentence. Anyway, it goes, you have built your whole insane belief system because you think you would be helpless in God's presence, and you would save yourself from his love because you think it would crush you into nothingness. You were afraid it would sweep you away from yourself and make you little because you believe that magnitude lies in defiance and that attack is grandeur. You think you have made a world God would destroy, and by loving him, which you do, you would throw this world away, which you would. And would in that last instance of the word would is in italics for emphasis. Therefore, you have used the world to cover your love, and the deeper you go into the blackness of the ego's foundation, the closer you come to the love that is hidden there. And it is this that frightens you. And I think that's the poignant, hidden nostalgia for the soul that really has drawn everyone to the course, or similar, programs and teachings that are based in pure non-duality and a non-polarized identity that is pure love. And that's what we all are, and that's where we came from, where we never left, and we are having a happy dream when we practice the course's metaphysics of returning, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. And wow, thank you for reading that. Because yeah, this is fundamentally, I mean, this like today's lesson, which, always comes up in my mind whenever we're teaching, is whatever the lesson is in the day. And today's lesson is really about that very thing that God is, let me mute that so people are not hearing that. That uh, God is with me um, all the time, and I've never left God. That's the thing that's uh, so um, helpful to come to know. I have never left God, and God has never left me. So we have never been separated or apart. We've never been in a situation where, we can lose. We've never been deprived. Everything is always here with us, and we always have it all. But, we just have to remind ourselves, over and over and over again, because we've reminded ourselves over and over again that God isn't here. So the lesson, I'm just going to read the last line, or the last sentence of today's lesson. You can indeed afford to laugh at fear thoughts, remembering that God goes with you wherever you go. And that whole idea that uh, whatever the world is throwing at me is nothing, and I know it. We know it. um, that that that's the truth about what's happening here. And yet we go into the playground of fear and think that it's um, think that we can overcome that intense desire for our reconnection with our Father by making, giving the world so much adventure. If that's a good way to put it, adventure. So,
Misadventure, maybe.
misadventure, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, there's really, if we really think about it, all the things that we've made big deals about, when we look at objectively, they've never really satisfied us, even if they seem to have, held our attention. We design them, on some level we're usually not consciously aware of, but we've made up these elaborate stories and amusement park worlds of fantasy. Disneyland kind of comes to mind. There's Fantasyland, there's Tomorrowland, there's Adventureland, there's Frontierland, there's all these things that keep us out of the present with our inner kindness teacher, but fixated on sin, guilt, and fear, but all the time trying to make special love about specifics, overcome the special hate that we on some level know is really there. That in both of which are just inadequate substitutes for what we fear we've trashed and abandoned, but we never could. We really can't um, undo the redemption that's awaiting us. I mean, we can't undo the the real capital L love that is our identity that we all share. And but we're afraid of it because we know that the self we made up, that this little desert sandbox playground of nothingness that has never satisfied us, will no longer cease to be relevant or important. And the way we transition to that is, being normal and doing the things that we would normally do. Like last night, my wife and I had some friends over to dinner, and we didn't talk about A Course in Miracles or anything resembling that, but we had a great time and just you know enjoying each other's company and talking about community stuff and this, that, and the other, and shared interest, and I was like, well, okay, it's never about the form. It's always about just remembering that whoever I'm with physically or mentally, um, they're my long lost best friend and savior. It's like if I just can keep that in perspective, right?
Exactly, exactly. And they don't have to know that. I mean, you know it for them. That's the beauty of it.
Well,
You
and
know,
then how do I know that they're not, you know, advanced spiritual teachers that are masquerading as just miscellaneous people that I have run across in my many moves around the country of an obscure planet.
uh, well, and you know what truth is they are, but they might not even know it. That's the thing we have to give. Everybody has to be given the identity, and maybe that's that whole reluctance to identify people separately by giving them names is a
Mhm.
whole idea of not identifying with that false person that appears to be just a normal human, but identifying and seeing them as the truth of what they are. What can hurt by looking for the Christ in everyone we see? What
Mhm.
can hurt
Mhm.
by expecting it? But you don't have to talk about it. You don't have to, well, do you think about this, or have you ever seen this, or do you know about this, or tell me. You don't have to do any kind of interview or discussion about it. Just assume that it's true. Just assume, this person is as equal to me in holiness. And, that might seem like not such a good thing when you don't think you're worthy, but,
Uh-huh.
at least equal. is a step up from the way that we look at most people. You know, we look at most people like, oh, no, they're just not into anything. They're just individual, uh, just normal people. Go to church every Sunday. You know, sacrifice a lamb at Easter. You know, whatever, whatever it is.
I don't remember doing that, but at least physically. But well, although I suppose when I was a kid, I before I became a quasi-vegetarian, I probably did eat a little lamb.
Yeah.
Or as the Gary Larson um, had in one of his cartoons, um, and after the drapes were pulled, Mary had a little lamb, and then some other side dishes or something like.
That's what I always think is so funny. My gosh. There's all these, Jesus is the good shepherd and he's carrying the lamb and all that. And everybody's, oh, sweet Jesus, such a good shepherd. Well, do they have any understanding of why we raise sheep and herd sheep and, you know, sure, we shave them and get their wool and make clothes, but that's not it. That's not all. If you have shearling boots, if you buy those Uggs from Australia that are so popular,
Oh gosh, yes,
that's made out of lambskin.
that's
It's like,
right.
you have lamb chops.
With or
or,
without Sherry
or,
Lewis,
or
huh?
without Sherry Lewis. Now her daughter's doing it. It's
Oh,
so
really? I
cute.
didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, her daughter has got lamb chop and I see she's on TikTok, I'm a
Oh, okay.
TikToker. But yeah, I mean, but yeah, what is Jesus carrying that sheep? He's not carrying that little lamb because he loves it and he wants to save it. Eventually somebody's going to be eating that thing. It's going to be on the dinner table. Let's get real here.
Well, but that's
That's
the dichotomy of every ego thought system, and the fact that we've chosen a split mind that consists of Holy Spirit and ego, and I mean, we're all in the same boat with that. But we can all, with our decision-making mind, that we all have, the same capacity to choose between the two. And so, the only thing that really makes a difference is how often do we choose one or the other. And if we gradually transition away from the insanity of the ego, which is dog eat dog or lamb eat lamb or whatever carnivorous activity in the mind we engage in, we're going to be more sane and more peaceful. Not that we don't have to, on the level of form, consume other life forms in order to exist. It'd be silly to deny that magic, if you will. Um, but just to forgive ourselves for making up a world in which it seems as if we need to cannibalize everyone and everything in order to attempt to find peace in a world where that's impossible. but but
yeah,
but very possible in our mind by choosing against the ego. In fact, inevitable, happily inevitable. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And that's what's so gorgeous about all of this is that, it's even this little conversation that we're having right now, it's propelling me into a higher understanding of the truth of what I am and not
Mhm.
just uh you know not an intellectual pursuit at all. It's actually a very personal and life altering, mind altering event. So those are it's so profound. Every week we get together and we talk about these things, and I just see the how it affects me. It's so beautiful.
Yeah,
Um,
I feel it too. And it's just like it's a gradual awakening from a dream where we believed we were inadequate and incapable, and the magnitude that we were talking about earlier and the grandeur is really not anything that we did. It was basically what we inherited, but we thought we threw our inheritance away. We thought we trashed perfect oneness and threw God under the bus and shattered the Humpty Dumpty of innocence. And it's like, nope, there was no wall. And in fact, there was no specific egg that could have been shoved off a wall or fallen of its own volition, because there's nothing to duality other than a dream. So any catastrophizing we might want to do with our ego mind has had no impact on our reality.
Yeah, it's a story. And just remembering that. So I'm just going to continue
Oh,
reading.
please do. Yes.
Okay, so I'll reread this very last section here. For still deeper than the ego's foundation, and much stronger than it will ever be, is your intense and burning love of God and His for you. This is what you really want to hide. And that's from text chapter 13 we just discussed. Ken says the notes then continue with the aforementioned reference to the biblical quote cited the previous day. Jesus urges Helen to say to Bill, this is some divine guidance, say this to Bill. And this is what it is. I think it's odd that I couldn't remember the correct quotation, a quote, inasmuch as you do this to the least of my children slash brother, unquote. I first decided the quote probably stopped with the least of these, and I was merely confused about an addition. I was sticking in, but not really there. Um, I think that should have not have been a period there. I was sticking in, but what was not really there. Then Ken says, this, of course, reflects the important characteristic of Helen's ego that was mentioned above and repeatedly pointed out to her by Jesus, as well as by herself, the characteristic of always, quote, sticking in, unquote, her own interpretations of situations that were, quote, not really there, unquote. Wow. Helen continues. Then I couldn't decide whether it was children or brother, and I was told to ask you, Bill. It is odd that you apparently couldn't decide between the same two terms. The order, i.e., from Jesus, for example, from Jesus, is to be sure you know this is important for both of us. So it's important for both of us to know whether it's children or brother, or which is the order. And then note, I am afraid of Cornell. And this is, Ken puts in brackets, a meeting to be held at the Cornell University Medical Center. Um, I'm afraid of Cornell today. If I can get my soul in place, it will be all right, though. I was really quite impressed this AM, which is now very unusual. I used to be all the time. But he says, be of good cheer that I have overcome the world. I was very glad you, Bill, called, even though I don't think I was upset beyond a brief moment. I went briefly and very inappropriately into shock when you said, Dottie is waiting and you can get into the cab alone, can't you? There is no competition at all between Dottie and me, and I thought chances were she did need you more at the time. I know you'll never abandon me. So the cab was waiting at the corner. All right, I'm not even going to try to interpret that because Ken will. As in Helen's letters, we find here the same honesty in observing her ego in action, enabling her to move quickly beyond its interpretations of slight and hurt to the truth. Acknowledging the oneness of the sonship and the safety of God's always present love prevents any thoughts of the ego from developing strength. This awareness was always very present in Helen. However, it was only during this period that she was able consistently to accept it. More often not than not in her more often than not in her later years, she chose to deny this truth, the result being the anger and pain that was her usual experience. Helen's openness to herself and to Jesus continued with these notes, which reflect her acceptance of the desire to be genuinely helpful to others. An important aspect of the new thought system A Course in Miracles would soon be advocating. And this is Helen. A rather surprising thing happened while I was meditating after Bill's call. I said just what you suggested. I am quite distressed, quote, I am quite distressed about something which is probably an error in perception of some past experience, and would you, Jesus, please straighten me out, end quote. So he said, quote, in dying you live, but be sure you understand what this means, unquote. I got terribly frightened because I thought I must be dying. And then I figured it's not a bad way to go. So just relax and enjoy it. So I just got resigned and very calm. She worked herself through that pretty good.
Wow. Yeah,
But
just kind of letting go and accepting that, we can't really change our script, but we can always change how we think about it, and not remembering that God goes with us wherever we go. Then it really, we're really translating to where the course meets us where we're at, more appropriately is, the Holy Spirit, our inner kindness teacher, the Jesus in our mind of the course is is always there to support our right-minded decision to choose against the ego and choose peace instead of attack, and choose love instead of fear. And knowing that that's always there, if we practice drawing on that, then it becomes more and more automatic over time. And I think that's the whole, if you will, Groundhog Day message of I'm declaring February Groundhog Month, and this year Groundhog Year, just because I think I need more practice and repetition.
yeah, and
But
you're here again anyway, so
yeah, exactly. What, like we're talking about earlier, what better thing do I have to do with my time than to just keep repeating what works? And what works is, you know, in whatever form is appropriate at the moment, choosing Holy Spirit instead of ego, and shared interest instead of separate interest.
yeah, exactly. So um and it's a couple things this reminded me of. Um is that uh uh, a really famous guru, teacher, Ramana Maharshi,
Hmm.
who lived in India, and I'm sure you're well aware. When he was a young boy, um, he got this idea that he was dying, and he resisted it and was pretty anxious about it. But then he just decided to go with it, and he just laid down. I think he just laid down on the floor and just let the feeling come over him and experience the experience of his own death. Um, Even though he didn't actually die, obviously, but I think that's kind of what Helen did. She got terribly frightened because she thought she must be dying,
Hmm.
and then she figured out it's not that bad, not a bad way to go. Um, so just relax and enjoy it.
Turn
Die
off your mind,
before you.
relax, and float downstream.
That's right. Yes, exactly.
Turn off your ego mind, that is. Yeah.
I love that song, by the way. Uh, but yeah, the whole idea of death that's it's so prominent. There's a lot of talk about death in A Course in Miracles. Um, and what is really happening. So I just think that it's funny that she just got this idea because Jesus said something to her about dying, and Ken continues, of course, she misunderstood that. Uh, but then also the on the previous page where she says a rather surprising thing happened while I was meditating, and she said whatever he suggested. I am quite distressed about something, which is probably an error in perception of some past experience. And would you, Jesus, please straighten me out? This is really the fundamental of forgiveness. And it reminds me of text chapter 5, section 7, the decision for God, where he says, you got to be firm with yourself. You look at your situation and you say, I must have decided wrongly because I'm not at peace. And I know I made that decision myself. It was my choice. It was a error in perception. And I can all the results, everything of it can be changed completely if I allow the Holy Spirit to undo all the, whatever it is I think I did. And that's exactly what it's saying right here
Yeah, yeah,
in
exactly.
this little section. And that was apparently something that Bill suggested to her.
Hmm.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
he really knew too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And you know, he was figuring it out as the material was coming in, just as we're figuring it out as the material comes to us, and we realize, gee, there's something to this stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, there
gee,
really is a piece that we can um, identify with and then practice by observing the contents of our mind and forgiving ourselves for when we want to, divide up what's always eternally one, huh?
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, let's see. It looks like it's getting up to your time. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
I'm gonna sign off so I can get in and get things ready for the next session of
All
hosting.
right, I'm
And
going to go ahead and mark the book
okay, and
so we'll know
I
where to start next time.
look forward to picking up where we left off this morning and next week.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I love you,
Thank you,
brother.
Lynn. Likewise, and look forward to our next conversation.
Absolutely. All right. I'm going to put on a little bit of music for until our next program starts. I'm going to stop the, I'm going to go on the right computer and